record, and then I will share the slideshow with everyone. Okay, so we are doing IP static routing today. So types of static routes, they're usually implemented on a network. Even when there's dynamic routing, there are some things that you're going to have to do manual routing on. Static routes can be configured for IPv6 and 4. Both protocols support the following types of static routes: standard, default, floating, and summary. Static routes are configured using the IP route and IPv6 route global configuration commands. When configuring a static route, the next hop can be identified by an IP address, exit interface, or both. How the destination is specified creates one of the three following types of static route. There's the next hop route, only the next hop IP address is specified. There's the directly connected static route, only the router exit interface is specified, or there's the fully specified static route, and that has both of them on there. IPv4 static routes are considered using the following global configuration commands. And you can see it has the IP route network-address sub-mask, and then IP address exit or pipe exit interface IP address, and then distance. And then there's a note: either the IP address, exit interface, or IP address and exit interface parameters must be configured. And then this is the same thing, just with IPv6. So this shows the dual stack network topology, no static routes configured for IPv6 or IPv4. And each router has entries only for directly connected networks and associated local addresses. Router 1 can ping router 2, but cannot ping router 3 LAN. And you can see down here, it just shows directly connected, and it just has all the stuff on there for it too. Each router has entries for directly connected networks. It's same thing, it's just scrolling down and letting you know. Okay, this is what it looks like when you're doing a next hop static route, and you can see down on the bottom, that's what it looks like. If the next hop IP is specified and the exit interface is derived from the next hop. So for example, 3 next hop IPv4 static routes are configured on R1 using the IP address of the next hop on R2. And then you can see how it has those listed out there. And then the resulting routing tables on R1 are in that little black graphic down below. IPv6 next hop static route, the commands for R1 are on the left, and you'll see the lovely IPv6 routing stuff, and then you'll see what they look like over on the right in the routing table. Directly connected static route, when configuring a static route, another option for the exit interface to specify the next hop address. 3 directly connected IPv4 static routes are configured on R1 using the exit interface. Note: using the next hop address is generally recommended. Directly connected static routes should only be used with point-to-point serial interfaces. So you can see how that looks on for the commands, and then you can see what it looks like on the interface on the bottom there. And then again for IPv6 and what it looks like on the table. IPv4 fully specified, and remember, fully specified has the next hop and the exit interface both. And so this has all of that on there. And this is IPv6's fully specified static route. And the reason fully specified static route must be used is because IPv6 link local addresses are not contained in the IPv6 routing table. Link local addresses are only unique on a given link or network. The next hop link local address may be a valid address on multiple networks connected to the router. Therefore, it is necessary that the exit interface must be included. The following example shows the IPv6 routing table entry for this route. Notice that both the next hop link local address and the exit interface are included. And then you just have that big blown up one on there. Verifying static route, along with show IP route, show IPv6 route, ping, and trace route. Other useful commands to verify your static routes include show IP route static, show IP route network, show running -config, pipe, section IP route. Replace IP with IPv6 for the IPv6 version of the commands. Okay, so default static routes. A default route is a static route that matches all packets. A single default route represents any network that is not in the routing table. Routers commonly use default routes that are either configured locally or learned from another router. The default route is used as the gateway of last resort. Default static routes are commonly used when connecting an edge router to a service provider network, or a stub router, which is a router with only one upstream neighboring router. The figure shows a typical default static route scenario. So you see your stub network, your router one, stub router, and then off to the network there. IPv4 default static route. The command syntax for IPv4 default route is similar to any other IPv4 static route, except that a network address is 000, and the subnet mask is the same. I'm just going to say the two sets of 4 zeros, and the route will match any network address. Note, an IPv4 default static route is commonly referred to as a quad 0 route. So much easier to say. The basic command syntax for an IPv4 default static route is as follows: router config, IP route, and then you have the quad 0, and then IP address pipe exit interface. IPv6 default static route. The command syntax for IPv6 static route is similar to any of other IPv6 static route, except that the IPv6 prefix and prefix length is :/0, which matches all routes. Basic command syntax for IPv6 default static routes is as follows: IPv6 route :/0, and then they have the IPv6 -address pipe exit interface. The example shows an IPv4 default static route configured on R1, with the configuration shown in the example for any packets not matching more specific route entries forwarded to R2 at the IP address. R1 as the IP route, and then quad 0, and then an IPv6 default static route configured in similar fashion is configured. Any packets do not match more specific for R2, and then you see that bottom section there for the same. The show IP route static command. Output from R1 displays the contents of the static routes in the routing table. Note the asterisk next to the route with the code S. The asterisk indicates that this static route is a candidate default route, which is why it is selected as the gateway of last resort. Notice that the static default route configuration uses the /0 mask for IPv4 default routes. Remember that the IPv4 subnet mask is a routing table. In a routing table, determines how many bits must match between the destination IP address of the packet and the route in the routing table. A /0 mask indicates that none of the bits are required to match, as long as a more specific match does not exist. The default static route matches all packets. And then on the bottom there, you just see the graphics of everything that they just explained. In this example, it shows the show IPv6 route static command output to display the contents of the routing table. Notice that the static default route configuration uses that :/0 prefix for the IPv6 default routes. Remember that the IPv6 prefix length in a routing table determins how many bits must match between the destination IP address of the packet and the route in the routing table. A : /0 prefix indicates that none of the bits are required to match as long as a more specific match does not exist. The default static route matches all packets. And then they just have that down there on the bottom. Okay, configure floating static routes. Okay, floating static routes. So another type of static route is a floating static route. Floating static routes are static routes that are used to provide a backup path to a primary static or dynamic route. The floating static route is only used when the primary route is not available. To accomplish this, the floating static route is configured with a higher administrative distance than the primary route. The administrative distance represents the trustworthiness of the route. Remember that previously where they were explaining the trustworthiness and how far away they considered that. If multiple paths to the destination exist, the router will choose the path with the lowest administrative distance. So they configure it with a higher administrative distance, the primaries on the lower, so it chooses the primary first, but if the primary drops out, then it'll go to that floating static route. By default, static routes have an administrative distance of 1, making them preferable to routes learned from dynamic routing protocols. The administrative distance of a static route can be increased to make the route less desirable than that of another static route or a route learned through a dynamic routing protocol. In this way, the static route, quote, floats and is not used when the route with a better administrative distance is active. So basically, it floats out there and is only used when the other ones are knocked out, and it's just a backup. So does that make sense to you guys? Gotcha. Okay. So the commands to configure default and floating IP default routes: IP route quad 0, then your IPs, and then there's the IPv6 version underneath it. And then the show IP route and show IPv6 route output verifies default routes to R2 are installed in the routing table. And then note the IPv4 floating static route to R3 is not present in the routing table. And then what should happen if R2 failed? To simulate this, R2 shuts down both of its serial interfaces. R1 automatically generates a syslog message for the link going down. And a look at R1's routing table would show the secondary route being used. So if you look down on the bottom and then through the graphic, you can see what they're talking about. Static host routes. A host route is an IPv4 address with 32-bit mask or an IPv6 address with 128-bit mask. The following shows the 3 ways a host route can be added to a routing table. Automatically installed when an IP address is configured on the router, configured as a static host route automatically obtained through other methods. Cisco's iOS automatically installs the host route, also known as a local host route, when an interface address is configured on the router. A host route allows for a more efficient process for packets that are directed to the router itself, rather than for packet forwarding. This is in addition to the connected route designated with a C in the routing table for the network address of the interface. The local routes are marked with L for the output of the routing table. A host route can be manually configured static route to direct traffic to a specific destination device, such as the server shown in the figure. Static route uses a destination IP address and a 255.255.255.255, which is a 32 mask for IPv4 routers, and a 128 prefix length for IPv4 host routes. And you can see on the left side on top is IPv4, on bottom is IPv6. The example shows the IPv4 and IPv6 static host route configuration on the branch router to access the server. And as you can see, IPv4 on top, 6 on bottom. A review of both 4 and 6 route tables verifies that the routes are active. And you can see that they've got everything listed out there on those tables. Configure IPv6 static host route with link local next hop. For IPv6 static routes, the next hop address can be the link local address of the adjacent router. However, you must specify an interface type and an interface number when using a link local address as the next hop, as shown in the example. First, the original IPv6 static host route is removed. Then a fully specified route is configured with the IPv6 address of the server and the IPv6 link local address of the ISP router. And then they just have everything down there that show you what it looks like. Okay, and have any of you been using the packet tracer for examples and how to use stuff? Because it really is very useful on showing you how to do this stuff. Have any of you had a chance to download it and work with it? Good, good, I'm glad to hear that. If you want help with that, let me know. I highly suggest that you do that. It will help you with your final, especially the skills portion. So keep that in mind when you go look at the Cisco stuff for the examples for the packet tracer. And if you look at some of the extras that I have out there from Troy, his stuff goes through how to work with the packet tracer. And the packet tracer gives you the best examples of how to basically do live fire with how all this stuff works on a production server and things like that. Yeah, it's just a thing, exactly. Okay, and this is just going over everything we just talked about. Okay, like I said, they're usually short and crammed full of stuff, so you want to go cry in the corner when you're done. So, does anybody have any questions on that, what we just went over? Anybody have any questions about anything? So, yeah, that's why your brain hurts, exactly. They compact everything in there and just kind of rapid shot everything at you. I would highly suggest going and looking through the slides. They're out there on the website. And as soon as we're done, I'll start this processing to YouTube. But yeah, go look at the packet tracer and mess around with that. The more you mess around with that, the more experience you have. And personally, the more you use that, the more it kind of clicks, because it gives you a more understanding and practical usage of the tools. So, okay.
I did have a question.
Yeah.
So will there be any there'll be a study guide for the final, obviously. Will there be any sort of I don't want to say study guide because I don't know, any sort of thing put out for the skills portion of it? In the sense hey, study up on or practice this.
I will put out a week ahead for the skills one, because I don't like to drop the skills one just the week of. Next week, I will drop the skills so you guys have it a week early so you can see what you need to learn. That way, if you guys have questions about, okay, that's great, how do I do this? We can start working on those in after lectures, and I can walk you through some of the stuff if you have questions for the skills portion of it. So yeah, the study guide though is basically just going to be like the last one I said with this. These are the form sections that you need to go over, but the skills one is going to just be a list of things that, all right, Tiny's being very helpful today. Get your butt out of my face, cat. And then we'll just walk through some of the exercises together if you guys don't understand what is being asked of you. So you will see that possibly on Sunday, but definitely by Monday. Any other questions? No? Okay. For tonight, I would suggest that you guys go hit. You're gonna cry. Yeah. Go hit Cisco, make sure you mess around with their stuff, look through their slides, go use Packet Tracer, hit me up if you have questions. I really need to know if you guys want to that are taking the recert, if you want to take it this Friday or next Friday. I'm fine with either. I would prefer next Friday because I've gotten a lot of questions that sound like people are not particularly ready to take it this Friday, and you only get one free retake, so remember that. I will just put out a little short thing that says, do you want to retake it this Friday or next Friday? And I'll put it on Discord. So it does sound like everyone wants to do it next Friday, but I will put something out there to make sure on Discord, just so I have a consensus. Anyway, you guys have a great night, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.